completely cut ourselves off from anyone else's true pain.
Why are you doing this?
Oh man, you used to like feel everything.
Obviously, there are triggers along the way.
We're not at the right station.
And you didn't wake me up.
Oh, you were having such a good nap, dude.
Jesus
you were like,
Christ, we are on a tour group with
I know,
people.
I just didn't have the heart to wake you up.
Jesse, I will start with you. This movie feels intensely personal, even if one does not necessarily know the specifics of what was fiction, what was drawn from your real experience. Can you talk about just the genesis of this script and your own experience of visiting Poland and your family's history and how it dovetailed with that genesis?
Yeah, the movie is both like autobiographical and personal, and the reason I would separate those two things is because they are quite different. The things that are autobiographical in this movie are like the house that we visit at the end of the movie is the house my family lived in. The towns that we visit are the towns my family was from. The trip that we do in the movie is all the places that my wife and I went in 2008, and the child in the movie is my kid. So these are the things that I would call like on the like autobiographical checklist. But the things that are personal in the movie are quite different. The things that are personal to me are really just all of the emotions behind it, and the emotional underpinnings of this movie are not the things that are autobiographical. The emotional underpinnings are like my feelings about being a person with grief, a person with anxiety, a person who lives in the modern world but and is comfortable materially but who comes from pain, and a person who feels guilt for coming from that pain while not having that pain myself. It's a person who envies men like this and at the same time feels so frustrated that they exist in the world. The scene...
He means the character.
Or the character, sure. So like the most personal thing in the movie is like what I say in the scene at the dinner table, like I just can't believe that 1,000 miracles for a survival produced us like this. And so that's something I like have wrestled with since my therapist pointed it out. And so that's the kind of personal stuff in this movie.
When you were 6.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He was my pediatrician, actually.
Well, and it's funny because I understand that originally the idea was that you might play Benji, this character toward who you have such strength of feeling, and which I can see in part because you have played the comically disruptive force in many a film, and here it's a... And can you just talk about that decision and how Kieran and maybe came into the picture?
Yeah, sure. Basically, after I wrote that scene that takes place on the monument where Kieran's character kind of lures everybody up, or in my position, manipulates everybody to come up to take a picture on the monument, I had shown it to my sister Hallie, and I said, do you think the scene is funny? And she said, yeah, it's funny. And you know, the only person on the planet who could play that role is Kieran Culkin. And so it was in the back of my mind. And then after I finished the script, I had kind of forgotten about that. And I was just thinking, that's the cool role. And I get to choose here, you know, because this is like the one moment I can, you know, cast myself in the cool character. And then I spoke to our producer, who's Emma Stone, and she said, you know, and she had been just having finished producing several movies that she was acting in, and she had just counseled me to not play a character that is so loose and unhinged while at the same time trying to manage a set. And it's just the best advice / firing I have ever gotten, because I can't think... First of all, I've never sat across from a more amazing performance in my life than Kieran. I've never seen somebody work the way he works, which is just completely giving over to his spontaneity. He lived in the space of this character rather than, you know, parsed each line for its meaning and trying to kind of link it to King Lear in some metaphorical, allegorical way. He was just living in this space to such a degree that it was seamless from the moment he woke up to the moment he went to sleep. And it's just the best performance I've ever seen in person, and certainly the biggest treat I've ever gotten as a director.
That's nice. And thank you for saying that. It's really nice he says these things, but it's like, for me, all the stuff that I wanted to do was right there on the page the moment I read it. I mean, and by the way, I did this interview today with someone from New York Times who said this exact thing. He goes, I found that like every time I understood who Benji was, he would just surprise me by doing something else. And I said, that was exactly what happened to me. I was like, I understood this guy right away when I was reading it. I understood who Benji and David were, and I felt like I got their history on like page 15. I would find myself laughing out loud later because I'm like, that is not what he was supposed to do. Why is he coming in hot? Why is he angry? And he just has a different response that you just don't expect. To that sort of thing, like when it came to the approach of the character and you're saying being spontaneous, the character is that way. He's very surprising and you don't really know what's going to come out of him. But to me, it's like, for me, doing it, it's at its best when it's like instinctual as opposed to intellectual. And I've had to like do jobs in the past where sometimes you have to really get inside the character's head and you have to analyze him, and you take things from the script and connect it to things in your life, and and understand the character more than the character understands himself. But then you have to show up on the day, forget all that, and try to be present. And for me, and it's a very rare thing when that happens, I didn't have to do any of that because this man did all the work for me by putting it in the script. It was full. And because the character's so spontaneous, I could just show up on the day unprepared and go, I'm going to bounce it off this guy and see, what happens. It's a bit of a ramble, but I think it makes sense.
Absolutely. I mean, I really love the characters and dynamics of you two and also of the tour group as a whole. And of course, Jennifer's character is a huge part of that. Can you talk about just writing Marcia, her place in this narrative, and Jennifer, I'll turn it to you then, how this script came to you and what in it spoke to you and drew you in.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Jennifer was I just got so lucky. I mean, as soon as her name came up, I realized, yes, of course, this is the only person on the planet. And the reason is, she's kind of like based on a woman named Martha, who was my neighbor, and my neighbor was so cool. She was a Jewish woman, but it kind of like sworn off kind of religious, very modern kind of person, and she was just divorced, and she was trying to look into her family ancestry as kind of like an attempt to get grounded again after a divorce and a move across country. And I just thought she was so cool, and I wanted to have a character in the movie that was like aspirationally cool, so that David and Benji will have somebody to play off of, and within 2 seconds, Benji clocks in that she's cool, and he's just immediately sitting for it. Oh, you were divorced? And then David's looking over like, what? We're not allowed to just say, we can say, and David's looking over as he just befriends the coolest woman. And so I needed somebody who immediately on screen you feel this is the cool person. But it's not just cool because she's also warm and feeling, and it's just exactly who Benji. Well, no, it's exactly who Benji would want to connect to, and it's exactly who needs somebody like Benji.
Jennifer, yeah.
It's all true.
Yeah.
What can I say? I'm just the coolest old lady you've ever met. I love the part. It was written, I just showed up, and I had like just this incredible feeling of something opening up. And the character is a woman who's in a very rocky moment, kind of one of those life quakes where her life is just doesn't exist anymore and doesn't know who she is, and she's been so invisible and lost herself in her marriage and her life in Los Angeles. Nothing personal. I'm sure there's all sorts of deep people in this audience, but in the particular story that we're telling, she's just lost her way, and so feels like she has ceased to exist as her former self and as her married self. So when she puts herself in this kind of awkward and risky position of just going to Poland by herself to go on this tour, just to remember what's important, and she just gets this medicine in the form of Benji. And all of a sudden, he just sees her. He sees her, she sees him, and he is everything that she's been missing, which is real, honest, deep, and present. And acting with you was deep and life-affirming and work-affirming, and then getting to be trusting this group, because really smart, really funny people are the only ones I trust. And these guys really are funny and really smart, and I'm eternally grateful.
I think in terms of the trickiness of this movie's tone and what it's talking about is realized especially, of course, when we get to Majdanek. And I so admire the way that you approach that place and film that place and show the characters responding to that place. The way you allow this hushed, contemplative moment, and yet it really sinks in, and yet it's over so quickly too, and it's so wordless. Can you talk about just getting permission to film there, all of that, and Kieran and Jennifer as actors, and Jesse, you too, of just being in that space? Yeah.
In terms of permission, it took a long time. These concentration camps don't want movies filming there, because if they were open to it, they'd have it be turned into Auschwitz every day with 100 extras in Nazi uniforms. So they're just, these are sacred places that should not have that kind of thing. So the negotiation took a long time, but finally it was to get to the following point, which was that I'm trying to do in this movie what they're trying to do as a museum, which is trying to get people to see this thing, to understand. As we know here, like, a lot of people don't think this thing existed. And it was just, I felt so lucky to be able to do this. And the temptation when you get access to a place like that is to have the sequences be long and dramatic, and to have every shot of every building, because every building there is worth seeing. And every image of every barrack is worth seeing, because it's all horrifying and it all demands to be part of history. And but then as you're editing a movie, there are other demands, which is that, I don't want that to be that's not the emotional core of the movie, ironically. It's the most dramatic scene, but it's not the core of the movie. The core of the movie is the relationship here. So it's about kind of balancing it and trying to portray it in a way that feels like it's not exploiting the imagery. I think it's very easy to exploit that kind of imagery. Almost by nature, you're exploiting the imagery by putting it in a movie. And so the feeling for me was just, how can we kind of, like, again, offset the trap here? And so that meant no music, that meant no stylized shots, that meant no close-ups of people acting, that meant no dialogue, whatever. And it also meant not over 4.5 minutes long.
As it was seen in the movie was how he put it on the page, which is how we got to experience it. I mean, for me, I'd never been, and I got to sort of experience it in real time as the character did. We walk in, we see these things. It was we weren't on a movie set. We just got to walk through and experience it and captured it on film.
It's beautifully judged, as is everything about the film. Thank you both. And thank you all three of you for being here, and congratulations.
Thank you
So much
Thank
for
you
doing
so
that.
much.
Great.
Thank you for being here
guys.
as well.
Thank you so much.